the discipline to actually follow through with the project of writing a book. And Phil is one of those 1 in 1,000. So Phil, tell us a little bit about what motivated you to write a book.
Joe, thank you very much for the interview. And yeah, I was first motivated by genealogy. That's popular with a lot of people, and especially among Acadians, because we go back, over 300 years in North America. So that was pretty exciting, learning all about that. And but it's pretty dry stuff. So I wanted to get a better picture of what it was like back then. So I started studying Acadian history, and fortunately, there's some good sources of Acadian history now, which wasn't the case when I was a kid. But anyway, I studied history, and then switched to writing a novel. But at first, I was trying to write a family history that went back several generations, 8 generations actually, and it was boring as heck. It was factual, but it was boring, and there were long periods of time where there's really not much to write about. You just had the birth and death dates, and So I tried to turn it into entertainment by writing it as a novel, which is, fiction, but using what I'd learned about genealogy and history to set the time and place for the scenes that I wrote. So that's how I got to writing a novel. And yeah, you're right. Finishing a novel is something else. Starting one is no problem at all, but finish one is another. It took me about 4 years. So yeah, I'm glad to have gotten through it.
Well, congratulations. You said that you wanted to write something that was entertaining, and the Acadian truly is entertaining, and I think it falls in the historical fiction genre, and I found it very very similar to some other books that I have read. And but so am I correct in saying it's historical fiction? You've done a great deal of research.
That's right. It's historical fiction, and what's important to understand about historical fiction is that it's primarily fiction. You got to get the time and the place right and the historical facts right, but it's entertainment first. It's not a history textbook. It's not a documentary. It's entertainment. In the same way, say that a movie about Bonnie and Clyde is entertainment. You still have to get things right. But let's say you're looking at Bonnie and Clyde was supposed to happen in 1930, and you see a 1940 Ford in the background. You're going to go, hey, that's not right. So the director got something wrong there, but at the same time, it doesn't destroy the story. You might not think too much of the director, but you've still got a good, entertaining story, and that's what I'm trying to do here.
Well, I found in reading the Acadian that it reminded me a lot of The Last of the Mohicans. Do you think that's an accurate portrayal?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of similarities there between the Acadian and the Last of the Mohicans. The Last of the Mohicans took place, the time of the story was about 100 years after the story that I wrote. But what's similar is that you've got a relationship between Europeans and Native Americans. In this case, it was the English and the Mohegans. In my case, it's the French and the Mi'kmaq Indians primarily.
Right.
But the time and the place are very similar.
What was the name of the book that Annie Proulx wrote?
Barkskins. Similar? Yeah, Barkskins is really much closer to the Acadian in time and place. Barkskins takes place in Quebec, And about the same, Barkskins, covers a long period of time. It's a big book. But the beginning of it is right about the same time I start my book, 1660. Might have been a little later. So if you watch Barkskins on TV, the first couple of episodes are very similar to the time and place of the Acadian Olivier that I've just finished and is available now. The other similarities, of course, are the relationship between European settlers and the people who are already there.
Right.
In the case of the Acadians, they fostered a really good relationship with the Mi'kmaq people from the very beginning. It was unique, really, even compared to Quebec, in terms of a good relationship among neighbors. It started because the first settlers not the first settlers, but the entrepreneurs and the explorers and the adventurers who first came to Acadia before there were any settlements came without women. They didn't bring women with them. And so it was both beneficial to them and necessary to intermarry with Mi'kmaq women. Fortunately, this was something that the Mi'kmaq people already did with other tribes and neighboring clans, because they felt that intermarrying was one of the best ways to maintain peace with their neighbors.
You mentioned Olivier, and I reflected on, when I was going through the Acadian, I reflected on the trials and tribulations of Olivier, and you can't help but wonder, my goodness, if I was ever confronted with what that young man was confronted with, would I have survived? And tell us a little bit more about Olivier and his background.
Okay. Olivier comes to Acadia as an indentured servant, which the French called habitant. Typically, he would work for somebody else for a period of about 3 years. And at the end of that period of time, he would earn the right to have his own land, usually as part of a parcel of land granted by the seigneur, the lord, that brought him from France. So he arrives there, and no sooner is he there than he becomes enticed about becoming a fur trader. It's a more adventurous life than he sees around him, and he meets a couple of guys that teach him the trade, so to speak. And while he's out there, he spends a good deal of time in the forest and with the natives. And while he's out there, he witnesses an atrocity that's carried out by a rogue group of English soldiers, or actually Massachusetts militia soldiers, who are in Acadia at that time, occupying all 4 Acadian forts. So it's an occupied country, if you will. That incident draws him into a conflict between Atahokam, who is a Mi'kmaq warlord, if you will, whose family is annihilated in this atrocity, and he seeks revenge against the English who did it. And Olivier is drawn into that conflict there. So that's an important part of the story. Even though he thrives as a fur trader, he really wants to have his own land, a wife and family, and he does that. But his love of the forest keeps drawing him back every winter, and it's a source of conflict within his own family, and endangers his own family. And that's an important part of the story too.
Well, I really got to care about Olivier, and I hope you're going to continue his story going forward. What's next for Olivier?
Oh, well, I'm working on a sequel now, but it actually doesn't involve Olivier. It's a prequel, and the main character is Charles de la Tour, who was an adventurer and one of the first governors of the Acadian colonies, and quite an interesting character. So yeah, that's going to be the next book. And then we go back and pick up, I have a plan to do about 5 books on Acadia that pretty much tell the Acadian story over 150 years. And it's a big job, but that's my plan.
Yeah, it's a big job, but somebody's got to do it, right? Well, you know, I think that's terrific, because the Acadian history is not history that we learn anything about in school. And right. I found it fascinating. Why don't you tell our listeners how they can get a copy of the Acadian?
Well, the ebook is available pretty much everywhere right now. You can get it online at Amazon, at Barnes and Noble, Google, Apple. Yeah, pretty much everywhere. The print book is currently available only at Amazon, but will soon be available at the online shopping of the other sites I mentioned, including Barnes and Noble. And I'm working with a few local bookstores in Acadian communities so that they'll have a stock of the book on hand.
Well, that's terrific, Phil. And just for everybody's information, again, Phil Daigle. Daigle is spelled D-A-I-G-L-E. The name of the book is The Acadian. It is Phil's first literary offering, and it's worth your time to go out and get a copy of it. Phil, we thank you very much for your time today, and good luck with your new book.
Thank you, Joe.